Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we're going to be having a bit of a chat just about our late announced double doubles. We know who's blanking in 29, we know who's doubling in 25. We've got some transfers and we've got some pod changes coming up on Two Friends Talking Shit about FPL. Well, welcome back, guys. Just me today. Unfortunately, Andy is away, but hopefully you'll enjoy my company. I'm going to jump straight in. I'm letting you know we're going to have a bit of a few changes in the pod coming up. Giving some feedback, we've kind of decided that we are probably overloading you guys a little bit with 40-minute episodes. So we're going to try and reduce that and do a couple of episodes a week, 20 minutes max, really give you that information so it's digestible. You can sort it through it, listen to what you need to, and then get on with the rest of your day. Hopefully, over the next few weeks, you'll start to see some of that stuff coming in. Today is a really short one. On game week hasn't finished, so no game week updates, no reviews, no previews, just kind of catching up with what's happened. So with the double, we found out it wasn't long before the deadline last week that we found out that the League Cup finalists were going to double in 25 to counteract that blank in 29. Well, great news, really bad for our planning. So now, what did we do with our chips? I know Andy was dead set on doing his assistant manager. We knew he was going to play slot in the assistant manager role. I was set on my triple captain. Plans changed. Everything changed. Triple captain didn't go ahead for me, and we instead reverted to the assistant manager chip. We'll talk about that next time in our review and our preview for the next round. But it did throw some stuff up, and now we know the outcome of those League Cup games. We know that Arsenal didn't manage to overcome Newcastle. Newcastle managed to hang on with another 2-0 win, 4-0 winners on aggregate. Going through to the final, and they'll be playing Liverpool. Great little comeback from the Reds from my point of view. Turned that 1-0 into a 4-1 aggregate win with a 4-0 win back at Anfield. So great news for that. Great news for our team. So now we've got double doubles this week. Who's doubling? Well, you've got Liverpool, obviously, are going to double now. So Liverpool will play Villa and Wolves, which means Villa will also have a double in 25. So they are going to play Liverpool, obviously, and Ipswich. Two doubles that are, probably good. Liverpool Villa is always a game that it can be good, it can be bad, it can be a draw, it can go either way. So it's very difficult to try and determine the best outcome from that. But does it change our teams too much? Well, maybe it does. Maybe you now think of you bring in an Ollie Watkins, or you hang on to a Rodgers in your midfield because then I've got a double and a good little run coming up. Your Liverpool assets are still going to be good for the double. This is kind of where the chip strategy changed a little bit. Like your triple captain Salah's still good. You still got a game against Everton to go this week. But, with the assistant manager chip, we've now got 5 fixtures if you want to stick with slot for all 5, or you can move to a different manager next week. But I wouldn't be moving this week personally. So 5 fixtures instead of 3, that's great for your assistant manager if you went ahead and played that. If you were on the ball and you knew what was coming. So it did change our thoughts quite quickly, I think. Very hard to pivot, especially if you weren't paying attention. You didn't have much more than, I think it was about 24 hours to really digest that information and take a risk on whether Liverpool would turn that result around against Spurs. But they have done, so that's good. The only thing that we now have to consider is, yes, it's good. We already have loaded up on our Liverpool assets for the double for 24. If you're thinking about your doubles for 25, Villa's probably going to be your other option. But do we want to load up a bit on Villa to then have them blank in 29? That means you're bringing someone in that you either have to bench or move. Watkins is still a good idea. He always has a ability to return in any game. So he's probably the one we go with. You probably already holding a Rodgers. But other than that, I don't know there's much places that we go. There's no one else that we really look at. We'll come up a bit later. We'll have a bit about transfers. And there is some interesting transfers in there that you could look at from a Villa perspective. I think we just need to be a little careful that we're not overloading and then forcing ourselves into playing a free hit, forcing ourselves into wildcarding earlier than we want to. Like, we've got a plan, we need to stick with our plan, and kind of, follow that through. From a Liverpool perspective, it's really good that we've managed to get through to the final at Wembley. We get that double. I was holding a Kulusevski, which would have been good for a double, and it would have been a bit of a differential, but that's obviously now not going to be a decent play. And with the fixtures going through, again, probably a bit difficult to keep hold of those Spurs assets if they don't have a double, and their fixtures haven't really turned. It's quite hard to see where Spurs are going. We've got a few teams now that it's very hard to pick and to choose. We talk about we'll briefly chat about this week. We've got Newcastle playing City, and it's like, which way is this going to go? You'd expect Newcastle to put up a fight and City maybe get over the line, but then Newcastle just beat Arsenal, and then Arsenal blitz City 5-1. So it's like it's all swings and roundabouts. It's really hard to determine which games are going to go with. And I know I have benching headaches this week, and we'll talk about that hopefully early next week. But yeah, very difficult. But great news, we've got another double. It could mean that, if Liverpool do well in the FA Cup, that they're going to have another double further down the line. So if you haven't played your triple captain, there's another option to play that there. I know a lot of people did play it. I think we had over 1 million managers playing the triple captain on Salah, but not just Salah, but this week. And a lot of people played that assistant manager chip too. So chips played. It's been great. It's been a great week. I think a lot of high scores going around. Interesting to see how that final game goes, and we'll really knuckle down from there. We'll talk about Villa. We'll move into that transfer section. It's been a transfer. We know it's been quite interesting. Moves where we didn't expect. No moves where we did expect. I think the first team that we look at is going to be Villa, with a bit of a shock with just before their Champions League game. Bid came in for Watkins. They've managed to hold on to that. They've kept hold of Ollie. He's staying at Villa Park for at least the next 6 months. And maybe that's a bit of intent that he will be going on. And he's a great striker, and I would expect him to maybe move to a team who's doing well, especially Villa struggle to recapture that Champions League spot. But if they can keep hold of that and go again next year, who knows? But Duran has gone. He's off to Al Nassr, transferred out. So that does open up our striker spot a little bit. And that, if you're thinking about a Villa asset for the double, Watkins is probably your go-to now. There's not another striker really that's going to take that mold. I know they brought someone in, Marlon, in as well, just to kind of cover that spot. But I'd expect Watkins to really nail down that striker spot now and hold that. So if you're wanting a Villa asset and you're expecting a bit of a spark from Villa, Watkins would be a go. It's the midfield that I'm looking at now for Villa. They've let Buendia go out on loan. They've let a couple other midfielders go out on loan. Done a little jig up in the defensive line. But it's two transfers that I'm really looking at. You've got Asensio coming in. I think he's a Champions League winner. He's won loads of things over in Spain, coming into that Villa squad, and he's coming in at 6.0. So that's a great price for a little Villa asset if you want to go for a little differential. A bit hard. The doubles come a little bit early, I think, for Villa. It'd be a bit better if we could see how he was going to integrate into that team and see how that was going to work. He's a loan move till, I think, the end of the season, so you'd expect him to be playing. But the big one for me is it was Rashford going to Aston Villa. This could spark this man back into life. If he plays, if he's on the wing, if he's going to be providing that assisting for Watkins and then pulling in and cutting in, I think it could be a great buy. He's only 6'5" at the moment, so that is going to be a big differential. If you get on him early before he sparks, that could be great. But again, we don't want to risk too much on going for Rashford when he hasn't been at his best. But we've seen this before with Man United assets, that they move away and then they flourish somewhere else. We've seen Sancho moved and has exploded at Dortmund and came back and is doing well at Chelsea. Even more recently than that, in this window, we've seen Anthony move away and do well in his first couple of starts. So it would not surprise me to see Rashford move to Villa Park and really kind of turn the screw and really help that team and go back to United with more confidence and maybe look at a full-time move to Villa. So he's someone I'm going to really be watching closely. Moves that didn't happen this transfer window. We thought dead set, new striker into Everton. Didn't happen. Still got Dominic Calvert-Lewin now injured. Does that bring Beto back into our thoughts? He's now probably the only recognised striker fit and, well, not firing, but he's fit. He can play. Everton do have some good fixtures coming up. Obviously, no more double this week. So, it's a play if you need a cheaper differential. Bournemouth, no new striker. There's some striking issues down at Bournemouth. We know that Evan Nielsen is still holding that injuries to the forward line. So that brings Dango really into our thoughts. He's playing out of forward striker in a Bournemouth team who are doing well, not going to return every week, but still a great option. We always look for out of position, and out of position forwards in that Bournemouth team are doing really well. Would you then double up with Django and a Kluivert or a Semenyo? Not too sure, but if you're having an out of position forward and a midfielder, that could work well in your favour, so definitely one to look at. The other big one, no forwards in at Arsenal. Do have lots of midfielders, but does that mean Havertz is still an option? I think it probably does, but in an Arsenal team that's very up and down, they do well, don't do well. We expect goals, we don't get them. We don't expect them, we get them. Really hard to own an Arsenal striking asset and be confident, especially with Saka still injured. Like, who expected them to put 5 past City and then not score at Newcastle? This is what I mean. Maybe we just need to think about it. Let's see how they go, and when they get some injuries back. Some people back from injury, I think we could be looking at Havertz again as a good option. I think he's sitting about the 8 mil, 8.5 mil spot. So is a bit of a price to get in, especially if you are holding or trying to get in a Haaland and someone like that. So that's difficult. Moving to Spurs, I think the big one is Matthias Tell coming in midfield into a midfield that we already have lots of options. This, for me, probably decreases how much stock I'm going to put in that Tottenham midfield. Still have Kulusevski. Brennan Johnson's had injuries. You've got Son. And Richarlison did go off injured against Liverpool, so maybe is injured again. But there's lots of options in there now, and maybe I'd expect Tell to be the one that plays because he's the one that Postecoglou's most recently brought in. But it's a bit hard to gauge where we're going to go in that. Good for Tottenham and good for them going forward. Probably bad for our FPL teams, I think, at least in the short term until we can see how that team settles. Moving on to West Ham, there's two quite interesting transfer picks, I think. Well, for me anyway, I think the first one is James Ward-Prowse returning from his loan early. We've seen a bit of that West Ham midfield not really clicking, not really firing. And we know Ward-Prowse, we know his prowess on his free kicks, we know his penalty stance, and we know what he can do to a team. So that's interesting. Another one to watch. West Ham are a team that we thought were having a bit of a revival and maybe haven't as much. So yeah, it does make it a bit hard, but definitely one to watch. They still have that, hopefully, that new manager bounce going in. They have had some positive performances. They are just struggling with their injuries, and I've been a bit unlucky with those injuries in the forward line. But that's where the other one comes in. Evan Ferguson moving on loan from Brighton to West Ham could be a great option if he can start putting some goals in, and then you've got in a Bowen and a Ward-Prowse sitting behind. That's going to be, it could be a cracking little differential forward line. Definitely want to keep an eye on. Ferguson has had his injury issues. Hopefully he's fit and ready to go and just needs a bit of time to get into this West Ham team. But that's going to be an interesting one for us to look at. The other one, if you're looking for a cheap defender, cheap way in at a top, so we say top 16, it's Chalobah moving back from Crystal Palace to Chelsea, and he's only 4.4. There'd be a reason for him going back there. Chelsea, we know, already have a bloated squad. I wouldn't expect them to recall someone from a loan and then, not really use him. And we're seeing we have seen someone go the other way to Crystal Palace, and Chilwell went that way as a transfer. So definitely some interesting moves, but I don't think things change for us too much. I think, again, looking at those Villa ones with Rashford and Asensio could be good, and it kind of reinforces the picks we've already made this transfer window. Like I said, with those Arsenal's, Bournemouth, the Everton assets that are already in the league, we already know what they can do. And I think that maybe that's a little bit better for us, that we know what they can do and we're familiar with them, and we're not taking as much of a risk if those players are coming in. So definitely wants to watch there. So other than that, guys, I don't really think we have too much to chat about this week. We've still got the FA Cup coming up this week. I expect to see, hopefully not too many injuries. I'd expect to see a bit of rotation going into those games. I know a lot of Premier League teams are playing teams from a couple of leagues down, so wouldn't expect too much. Hopefully not too many upsets, and we can kind of see where we're going forward. Will be Liverpool versus Everton is next week. We'll have a bit of a preview. Unfortunately, we won't get to do a review after that game because the game week does start immediately the day after. So we'll do a little bit of a preview next week. We'll have a bit of a chat about what our plans are for the double game week 25 and going forward. And from there, we will eventually sum up game week 24 when it eventually does end. But until then, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed the shorter pod, get a bit more out of it. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me. Sorry Andy's not here. He'll be back next week. Thanks, guys. See you later.